In this video, I'm going to take you through an entire semester of my Jacquard Design class, which was one of my favorite classes that I've taken at FIT so far. We combined our skills in digital print design and weaving to create a collection of super intricately woven fabrics, and we actually got to send our main design to a local mill to have it professionally woven, which was so exciting. As I usually do when I'm researching my topics for my classes, I visited the New York Public Library's picture collection for some inspiration. I ended up finding a folder for my hometown of Monterey, California, which got me thinking. I've always wanted to do a collection inspired by the kelp forest ecosystem of the Monterey Bay, which is really sentimental and special to me, but I wanted to save that topic for the perfect school assignment. Because I was so excited for this class, I thought this might be the right opportunity. Again, it's the end of my very long but really nice day, and I have a big folder of photo inspiration that I'm going to take with me to class tomorrow to hopefully help me figure out what exactly it is I'm doing in my classes. It's getting late, I'm heading home, I got some mood boards to make, and yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Here's the first mood board that I made, which is directly inspired by the lush kelp forests of the Monterey Bay, and features a color palette inspired by the rockfish red and kelp yellow colors that are found in this environment. We were also asked to bring in some thumbnail sketches and some brainstormings for our first design. I knew that I wanted my first design to feature kelp as the main subject, so I started working on a stripe design that features large intertwining kelp fronds. Then, over the next few weeks, we started drawing our designs in a program called Textile. Our first project is a damask fabric, which is a Jacquard-Woven fabric made with only one warp yarn and one weft yarn. To start out, we were asked to create two versions of a single design. One version that features only 2 colors, and another version that features up to 6 colors, where the colors will eventually be replaced by woven structures. I also printed out versions of my designs just to see how big they would actually be as real fabric. Hello again, I just finished up in class, and pretty much in both of my classes, I was just like scooting pixels around one by one until they were in their perfect places, which is definitely very tedious and time consuming, but also kind of meditative at the same time. The only thing is now my eyes are so dry and I'm so tired from just like staring at screens all day. As usual, I just have a little bit of work to do when I get home, and then I'll see you tomorrow. Today's class was focused on putting weaves into our designs. This pretty much means that each color in my drawing will now be replaced with a woven structure, which are the red and white grids on the left. Where this becomes really fun and technical is figuring out what woven structure to pick for each color, because each structure will produce a different look based on how much warp or weft is in predominance. In each one of these little grids, the red squares represent warp threads, and the white squares represent weft threads. You might notice that each one of these that I've selected has a different positioning and ratio of white and red, which affects how we're going to perceive these colors when they're woven. This might make a little more sense when you see it applied to my drawing. This is right now only made up of red and white pixels, but you still see the kelp design because of how those pixels are arranged in relation to one another. But just staring at this in red and white pixels is no fun, so let's simulate this as if we were actually weaving with yarns instead. Here's my design as if it were woven with red and yellow yarns, which I thought looked really pretty together. And that's pretty much the basic concept of designing a jacquard fabric. Hopefully my little explanation of this whole process made some sense. I think it's just the absolute coolest thing ever, and I really wanted to share the magic. Hello again, I just got out of my Jacquard class, and honestly, I am enjoying that class so much. And I kind of knew I would, like, going into it, so just having that validated has been just like really exciting. I think it's just a really fun blend of both like creativity and like motif drawing and just like expressive design, plus the technical kind of puzzle solving that comes with weaving, and I think that's just like perfectly my happy place. I'm just really enjoying it. The only thing that's been a little bit hard is just dealing with our computer program, because it's the kind of program where things just don't necessarily work super fluidly, so you'll be like working really hard, adding a bunch of details to something, and then it'll just suddenly crash and all your work's gone. And that can be really hard when you're super in the moment and you just forget to save, which it happens, you know? So I've just been working on like being patient, saving my stuff more, being more careful and more slow, which overall is probably a good thing. Anyway, I have a little bit of work to do and then I'm just gonna go to bed, so I'll see you tomorrow. Over the next week, I spent quite a lot of time finishing my designs by looking through the library of weaves and trying out nearly every single one just to figure out exactly what I thought would look best. And eventually, I finished my 3 damask designs. This one features only 2 woven structures, and these 2 each have 6 totally different woven structures. And then it was time for our first critique. Since we weren't actually going to weave these fabrics, we were asked to print out simulations of our designs at actual scale so we could put them up on the board for our critique. We were also asked to create a portfolio page that features some inspiration images, our favorite of our designs, and our favorite design texture mapped onto a product. I decided that I wanted my collection to be for the home, so I decided to put my kelp stripe on a funky statement couch. It's a little bit silly, but I would totally love to have this in my home. Hello again, I just got out of my Jacquard class, and overall that critique went super well. I actually really liked the print that I made, and I think that I got really good feedback from both the teacher and my classmates, so I'm feeling really good. We also started talking about the second project that we're gonna be doing in this class this semester, and that's like the big project. We're pretty much gonna take all of the techniques, all the ideas, all of our capabilities, and make the best print imaginable, because we're gonna send it to a mill to have it professionally woven, which is just crazy because that's like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. That's not something you can just like do. So our teacher's been hyping us up a lot. She's like, these are gonna be your best designs ever. You have to love your topic, give it your all, give it your heart and soul. And she's really like getting us ready to make this the best thing we've ever made before. And I think I'm there. Like, I'm so ready. I've literally never been this excited for an FIT project, like ever. So anyway, enough of my rambling. You can tell I'm very excited about this. But for now, I just have to head home, do some work, and go to bed like normal. So I'll see you tomorrow. The following week, we started working on our main designs, and I had an idea that I was really excited about. I decided to consult the Miller and Lee Guide to the Coastal Marine Fishes of California for some inspiration. This is a book that we used to use all the time in my marine biology degree program, and it's essentially a guide that helps you figure out what kind of fish you're looking at by asking a series of questions relating to the fish's appearance and helping you narrow down the options. In California, there are over 80 species of just rockfish alone, which are always on display at any local aquarium. And I spent many, many years working in aquariums, so rockfish pretty much as a whole have a really special place in my heart. So I thought it might be fun to do a print inspired by rockfish and their grumpy little faces. So using my iPad, I screenshot a whole bunch of rockfish from this book, and I just started drawing over them and adding flourishes using really simple rounded shapes, which I thought might translate well to woven design. Once I had a silly little school of fish, I started assembling them into a repeating pattern using Photoshop's pattern preview mode. Eventually, when I was happy with this layout, I had to color reduce my design. This seems like it would be pretty simple and straightforward since I was working with only flat color, but somehow I still ended up with a million pixels that I had to go in and clean up one by one. After spending all of that time cleaning things up, I decided that my fish needed a little something to separate them from one another because I was worried that they were just blending together a bit much. So I first gave each fish a black outline to define them, and then I added some halftones for some depth. And then I spent many, many more hours just cleaning pixels. Our class period ended literally hours ago, and I've just been here working nonstop on these dang halftones, which have taken me literally forever, but now that they're done, it feels so good. I think it was the right decision just to add like a little bit of depth and dimension to my print and just keep the motifs a little more separated. So yeah, I am just over working on this today. I've been staring at these fish for way too long and I want to go enjoy my weekend. So I'm gonna pick this up again in next class period and I'll see you then. After looking at my design some more and asking my friends and my professor for feedback, I realized that I hated the halftones. So instead, I switched them out for this kind of cross-hatched line work style, which I ended up liking a lot more. Then I once again spent even more hours cleaning up every single pixel one by one. The next week, our professor brought in this giant length of fabric, which is called a weave blanket, which is going to help us figure out what weaves we want to use in our designs. Our last projects featured only one warp color and one weft color. For this project, we're using a black warp and 2 different weft colors. So this weave blanket features a black warp and 2 example weft colors, in this case a blue and a golden yellow, and it shows us how these 3 colors will look together in each possible woven structure. And each structure has a corresponding number that we can then plug into our computer. So basically, we spent a lot of time just staring at this blanket, figuring out which weaves we like the look of, and then writing down those numbers to try them out in our own designs. So here's an example of how this is used. I knew I wanted the pupils of my fish to be pure black, so I used this blanket to figure out that the pupils need to be matched with woven structure number 1. Once we had a list of potential weaves, we plugged in those numbers into our weaving software and attempted to create a simulation. This usually took absolutely forever, and it completely crashed about 50% of the time, which, as you can imagine, was super fun. But eventually I got my first simulation of my fish design, which was so exciting. I used a black warp and a yellow and red for my 2 wefts, which looks pretty bad at this moment, but just ignore the colors for now. I then printed out my design at actual size so I could look at things in person. And specifically, I tried to fix sections where the weave that I picked didn't really go together with the weave that was next to it. Each tiny edit like this meant bouncing back and forth between several different softwares and running a whole new simulation to check my work, so you can just imagine how long it took me to get a simulation that I was happy with. During the next few weeks, while I was editing my fish file, I also had to start thinking about yarn colors for our class's weave blanket. Here's last year's weave blanket, where each student picked 2 colors and got a swatch of how those 2 colors would look woven together with the black warp. We consulted this blanket and our simulations to help us figure out what colors we might want to use for our own samples, and we also collaborated as a class to get as many different samples as possible. I really liked this terracotta and vanilla combo from a previous student, which was very much a ROCKFISH color palette. Since I already had this woven sample and I knew that these colors looked good, and I also knew that one of my friends was going to make a very similar variant of these 2 colors, I wanted to use my own sample to try out some other yarns that caught my eye just to see what would happen. I ended up picking this deep, saturated red color and a very shiny version of the vanilla color. And then a few weeks later, we got our class's weave blanket in the mail from the mill, which felt like Christmas. Here's how my little section turned out, which I actually didn't like at all, but I knew that that might be the case. This red yarn was just way too dark, so there wasn't a lot of difference in the woven structures that featured the red in predominance. The gold was okay, but maybe a little bit too yellow. So I consulted my sample, that one sample from last year, and my friend's new sample to try to find something in the middle that I was happy with. And even though my simulation was being a bit weird and showing some fluorescent oranges that just didn't make any sense, I was pretty happy with how things were turning out. Good morning, happy Friday! So as of Wednesday, my fish print is officially done. Officially. Anyway, so all of those files have been handed off to my professor, and then she's gonna hand them off to a local mill, and hopefully super soon we're gonna get our fabrics woven and handed back to us, and I am so looking forward to that day. So today I'm heading to class, and I think the rest of the semester is just gonna be kind of like refining our collection of prints. So we have to create one more print and then recolor our first designs just to make sure that everything is super cohesive. And I don't really have any ideas at the moment. I'm kind of like a little bit short on inspiration. It's that time of the semester where I'm just like super tired, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. So let's go and let's figure it out together.
To recap, our first projects, my kelp design, featured only 2 yarns. Our second project, my fish design, featured 3 yarns. And now our third project can feature many more yarns using a technique called box motion, where the weft yarns are striped in the back of the fabric. Here's an example of this technique. This cityscape design features tiny little colorful windows that look like they're pretty randomly colored in, but if you look closely, the colors are actually striped, which is way more obvious when you flip over the fabric and look at the backside. So this project is all about using multiple weft yarns for strategic color placements. So my task was to figure out what designs I could add to my collection to make the whole thing feel cohesive and complete. This was, in all honesty, so much harder than I thought it would be. At this point, we were so close to the end of the semester, and I was feeling so creatively burnt out. And that, plus the thought of having what was basically unlimited options for potential designs, was kind of overwhelming. To try to get myself out of this creative block, I just doodled some thumbnail sketches on my iPad, which were loosely inspired by some of the textures and shapes found on my rockfish. Eventually, I came up with something that I didn't totally hate, and I spent the next few weeks finishing this one up and working on my last design.
Good morning. So it's been a couple weeks since I last checked in about this project, and that's because we're kind of just like in a waiting period, waiting for our fabrics to be woven by the mill. And in the meantime, I've been working on some just like coordinating designs, and nothing really has been like super exciting or super finalized yet, so there hasn't really been too much to show you. But today I think we're finally getting our fabrics, which I am so excited for. I'm so excited to see how my fabric turned out, and I'm excited to show you how it turned out as well. So let's go to class.
When I saw the pile of our class's fabrics on the table, I was speechless. This silly grumpy fish fabric is just so ridiculous, and it just makes me smile so much. I ended up getting 1 yard of this fabric, and I'm not sure exactly what I want to do with it or make with it yet, so for now it's being safely kept until the right inspiration or the right opportunity comes my way. After getting my fabric, I finished up the rest of my project and my presentation, and here's how it all turned out. My project was inspired by the unique kelp forest ecosystem of Monterey, California, and is intended for home textile applications. I was inspired by this deep, dark, cold, and very harsh environment that millions of organisms call their home, including the rockfish. My first design was inspired by the kelp itself, which is a huge algae that grows vertically in enormous columns, which I thought would make for an interesting stripe design. My second design is inspired by the rockfish local to this region of the world, and takes direct inspiration from the Miller & Lee Guide to the Coastal Marine Fishes of California, which features charming illustrations to highlight the diversity of these grumpy-faced fish. My third design, named after one of my favorite beaches where my friends and I would boogie board after work, features pinwheel shapes that emulate the rolling waves and strong current of the powerful coast. And my last design takes the spots that were seen on my rockfish illustrations and turns them into a top-down view of the layered shale reef that makes up Monterey's seafloor. Here are all the designs together in 3 colorways. The first is a blue, which you'd typically expect from an ocean-themed collection. The second is in shades of red, inspired by the natural color of the rockfish. And the third is an algal green, which is really close to the actual natural color of Monterey's rich ocean water. And lastly, here's a mapping that shows what my designs might look like in an actual room, where the kelp design is a curtain, my rockfish is a decorative pillow, and the 2 seats are upholstered with my 2 coordinating designs. Thank you so much for coming with me on this entire semester's worth of Jacquard weaving class adventures. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought of this whole process. I genuinely had so much fun in this class, and I can't wait to continue to explore this kind of weaving in the future. If you stuck around until this point in the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons to help support my channel, and I will see you in my next adventure. Bye!